Hello, my name is David Wilson,
And I'm Sarah Galinsky.
and this is our trauma explanation summary video. The hypothetical client that we are discussing is his name is Sam, and he's a 30-year-old male. When Sam was 7 years old, he was sexually molested by his uncle that came to live in his home after his father went away due to a criminal past. Sam recently reached out to therapy due to um, having flashbacks that really came about out of nowhere, according to Sam. Sam's about to get married. He's been doing a lot of stressful wedding planning, but has reached out with these flashbacks. This conversations that we're about to demonstrate is really a snippet on some of the therapy sessions Sam has had. This isn't the first session Sam has met with the therapist before, but this is a sort of a snippet on Sam with regards to some of the explanations of how trauma really impacts them both physically, emotionally, psychologically, and with relationships as well. So, hey Sam, how are you doing today?
I'm doing okay. It's kind of a stressful time, all this wedding planning, but I'm hanging in there.
Sure, I can imagine. So, when we last met Sam, we had talked about self harm, and you sort of wanted to talk about your history with that. So, tell me about your feelings and sort of your thoughts and past actions with regards to self harm.
Well, not recently, but when I was about 14, things were pretty tough. Things were pretty rough in terms of um just my I just felt like crap. And so there was a time where I thought about, just ending it all, and I never had any plans or anything, but sometimes I just didn't understand why I should even bother living. I couldn't feel anything. Um it just felt awful.
Mhm.
Um and if things got really stressful, I would say up until I went to college, I if it got really stressful, sometimes I would cut. I would either do the insides of my arms or my legs, not too deep, just enough to kind of feel the pain and take the pressure off of
Sure.
whatever was bothering me.
Sure. So, I mean, given all the stress that you're going through now with the wedding planning, have you had any of those thoughts or feelings?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
Um I it you know no.
Okay. So really, it's just when you were sort of younger, when you were, a teenager going into college, sort of the younger times was really the last time.
Yeah, I mean, like, if I need to blow off some steam, now I'll just go and, I'll go to the gym and work out, or, go do something outside or
Sure.
whatever.
Sure. So, a lot of the times, when we talk about, these feelings of self-harm and that you sort of experienced when you were younger, I want you to understand that it's very normal amongst individuals that have, such as yourself, that has experienced you know, traumatic experiences. Things such as cutting and suicide thoughts and ideations and really attempts is normal ways of really sort of trying to figure out, not really normal, but common for individuals that have experienced sex abuse. But the other common things that really are that we do see with individuals is body image things. So a lot of people really feel like dirty or ugly, and don't really, feel like themselves. They're dissatisfied with their body appearance. So some people do form sort of a body dysmorphia. A lot of people like to go to the gym and they'll really focus on working out, and some people may starve themselves and form sort of eating habits because they aren't satisfied with the way they look. So, I want you to understand that, those are some normal um, and common things that really come about physically from individuals that have suffered a traumatic experience such as you when you were 7 years old. Do you have any sleeping problems at night, Sam?
Oh, I don't sleep.
You don't sleep?
No, I mean, like, I just get into bed and I drift off, and then I wake up really out of nowhere, and
Oh,
it's, you know, I have nightmares, and so I don't know. I maybe get like 3 hours of sleep,
sure. So
maybe.
that's also normal. You know, having some sleeping issues, you know, it impacts you physically as well. Your ability to really function the following day and really be, you know, the best you can be, both mentally and physically. You know, all that is really impacts with sleep. I know many people have always told you and all of us the importance of getting 8 hours of sleep every day. And unfortunately, when you suffer from such a traumatic experience like you did when you were younger, you know, sleeping problems and nightmares is something that comes along with it. You know, another thing that, you know, you might not know, and I don't know if this is something you're experiencing, but another thing is sort of the lack of regular medical care. And so the reason that is, you know, when you have to go to the doctor and get physicals done and other things, it sort of is invasive. You know, it sort of feels like they're sort of asking you to be vulnerable and take clothes off, and they're sort of touching you in spots just as they're checking to make sure you're healthy. But you know, it's uncomfortable. And so a lot of individuals that have suffered from sex abuse or really any traumatic experience physically when they were younger do sort of have an issue with going to the doctor on a regular basis. Is that something that you've experienced before, Sam?
Yeah, I haven't really been, you know, I haven't had a checkup. I mean, I'm only, you know, I'm just 30, so there's nothing, you know, I'm all right. I mean, I used to get sick a lot as a kid, but you know, I it's unpleasant. I don't like to go.
No, you know, and that, like I said before, it's very common. You're not alone in this. You know, definitely, you know, I want you to understand that even though you're 30, preventative, you know, care is definitely something to consider and be on your radar. But, you know, we'll work together to sort of overcome some of those anxieties and stressors that you have now. Um, but you know, I wanna sort of jump in a little bit with regards to some of the emotional stuff that really goes on in play here. So I do want to, you know, ask you some questions about intimate physical contact. And so I know that individuals that have suffered from sex abuse, you know, have also had issues with, you know, sort of outbursts, some abilities to really control their emotions. I know that sometimes when they're in situations where they may be getting intimate with someone consensually, um, certain things could trigger and their reactions emotionally could really come out. Have you ever experienced any issues with consensual sexual encounters?
Um, I mean, as long as I'm in control, and you know, my fiance doesn't, you know, get anywhere near my butt, I'm okay.
Sure.
You know, I'm pretty touchy about that. Um, I don't think I've never exploded or anything when we've been intimate, but it's definitely one of those things. I don't mess around with that stuff, and
Sure.
she knows better than to go that direction. Um, I don't think I wouldn't say that I'm explosive most of the time. You know, if I'm stressed out and I, you know, can't get out maybe, but you know, most of the time it's just, um, I don't know. I mean, I don't, I don't really have very many feelings at all. It's just,
Sure.
I just kind of feel,
So you know that what you're going through is normal. I want you to know that, you know, it's a common for individuals, like I said before, that have experienced past trauma to really sort of have these negative feelings of anger, disgust, even with some guilt with regards to touching. Like I said, with some of the physical aspects of really going to the doctor and having that routine medical care. I mean, having the doctor touching you and sort of putting you in an uncomfortable situation really does tie in with um, arousal and really having those consensual sexual encounters. So, you know, individuals, you know, another common really thing is, you know, especially with men, is some experiences with erectile dysfunction, sometimes some issues with that, which is embarrassing, and obviously it's emasculating in a sense. And so, you know, it does sort of tie back into the physical aspects of, you know, of eating disorders and body image and going to the gym and really trying to ensure that you have this higher level of masculinity. um, but it's not uncommon, and it's common amongst all and most individuals that have experienced trauma at such a young age, and more specifically sexual trauma. Um, there are many forms of childhood sexual abuse, and and it really impacts the psychological, emotional, physical of the person in all different ways. So not one person is the same. But really, when you think about some of the emotional responses you have you ever reacted? Would you ever sort of highlight a time where you might have reacted emotionally, like angry or disgustful, where it was sort of extreme, where someone would define it as extreme?
Really, it's I'm not too keen on like I remember a couple of times when I was in high school, some guys were messing around in the locker room, and I got I got suspended for 3 days for that, because they were bothering me, and it's nothing that most kids would probably consider normal, but I just snapped.
Sure.
And I decked a guy, and we got a couple of days suspended, both of us. But that, really in my day-to-day life, no. I mean, like, gosh, I just kind of tune it out. If I'm stressed, I just kind of, do my own thing and find a way to just deal with it. But most of the time, I just kind of feel numb.
Yeah. No, and again, that's one of those things that is really seen, with regards to individuals that have experienced, prior traumatic experiences. There's a sort of this numbness that comes on, and it does play into the psychological, which we'll go into later. But I want you to know that some of the emotional responses and the physical aspects of your responses, since emotion is really a mental and physical piece, is sometimes it will go where you may be numb, and then you may be triggered, and then your physical response may be aggressive or angry, and may go to the further extreme. But I want you to sort of know that all this is really tied into the trauma, and that trauma that you experienced when you were 7. We talked about this in some of the earlier sessions. You never went to a therapist before, and when this all really came out, your parents really wanted to keep it within the family and never really talked about it with anyone. So I know that this is really the first time you're processing a lot of this stuff, and you've sort of created some habits and some coping mechanisms that have worked thus far where you're at. But obviously, some of them have some negative connotations, and really it's due to that traumatic experience you've had. So at this point, what we're going to do now is switch roles to discuss the next 2 issues with regards to Sam.
Okay, Sam, so why don't you tell me a little bit more about your flashbacks? You said you think they came out of nowhere?
Yeah, it was one of those things where, I never really experienced them before. I've been doing this wedding planning with my fiance, and, it was one of those things where I just, it's been stressful, and I've been working full time and doing some extra hours at the office to try to get some extra money so that we can pay all these expensive bills. And, we're going through the guest list, and, it's just stressful. It really is. So I don't know if it's because of that. I honestly don't know.
The guest list. So are you saying that, are there people related to the trauma is your uncle invited to this wedding, or?
No, Uncle Steve left his wife, his wife left him years ago, a little bit after the stuff happened with me. Aunt Susan, has really always been close to the family. My mom really wants Aunt Susan and her kids to come. She keeps making these statements like, you got to invite them all, because then they're going to invite you, and all the money's going to be nice, and it's great and all, but like I don't like Aunt Susan.
Okay, so it's possible that maybe her relationship with Uncle Steve is maybe what brought this to your attention. Maybe unconsciously or subconsciously.
I mean, it could have. I mean, it makes sense. I mean, it makes sense to me.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, it's not uncommon, especially for somebody who hasn't really had a chance to work with someone and really process something that, I mean, your trauma happened over a longer period of time. 6 months is a long time, especially for a 7-year-old. So, having something just suddenly bring your brain back to those things isn't uncommon. When a child has a situation where, in terms of a traumatic event where they can't escape, and you're dealing with your fight flight response, part of what happens is to protect yourself, because you can't get away. Your body's going to freeze. So different things shut down in your body. You're gonna numb your body. You're gonna kind of just detach over 6 months. Then you talk about feeling numb emotionally, that you just don't feel anything, and that's probably related to how you used to cope with the trauma, with the abuse that you were experiencing over that amount of time.
Yeah.
So in terms of your flashbacks, when you're experiencing something that traumatic, our brain kind of chops up an experience like that, and instead of it going, your memories going into one file, and it kind of changes over time. It doesn't get processed, and it's in different places, and different fragments maybe brought to your attention by different things in your environment, different sensations that you have in your body throughout your life. So it's not uncommon to just, if your family is kind of coming together and there's this elephant in the room of what happened to you when you were 7, and your aunt is you're being pushed to invite someone who in some ways feels intrusive to you, it would make sense that some of these memories are kind of coming back, because they're still waiting to be processed. They're still waiting to kind of go from being in the present moment to something that happened to you in the past. So, from a psychological standpoint of processing that as a 7-year-old, part of your 7-year-old self is still holding on to those things and trying to make sense of it all. And so processing that is going to be really, really important, moving forward. You're talking about being numb too, also, the cutting, that makes sense too, because our bodies release all kinds of different hormones and endorphins. And when you're under stress, when you were 7, your body was numbing, and that becomes habitual. Your stress response kind of goes off track, and it's on this new track and this new routine. And so if it worked for you to cope and feel better by kind of pulling yourself away, detaching yourself from the present moment, that's going to stick with you. And things like physical pain can bring you back into the present moment. So it makes sense that might be something that you have had to deal with. In terms of how you deal with stress and how you process relationships, you talked about that right now it's very difficult with your family, because you're trying to deal with a family member who is problematic for you. She was part of the problem. How is it that, how do your relationships kind of evolve? How do you feel?
I mean, it's been tough, it's been hard keeping friends around. I really don't trust a lot of people. Obviously, I go through friends pretty quickly. And, so when I was in high school and when I went to college, it was a different set of friends in college. And then when I graduated college, I have a different set of friends that when I was working in restaurants and stuff before I got like my job now. But, it's been on and off, I haven't really had any serious friendships, long lasting friendships or relationships. And, with my parents, I'm like, I get a lot of fights with my mom. I don't like her that much, to be honest. As bad as that sounds, she, my dad was gone. He couldn't. It wasn't his fault. She couldn't do things without him, with Uncle Steve around. So it's been rough. I don't really trust people, and I have a lot of resentment towards my mom. And my dad is just, he's tried, but he's he's not the best father. He's there, but he's not like, this great, let me talk to you about your feelings and emotions type dad. So, I mean, my relationships really have been, spotty, to be honest.
Okay. Well, I mean, the fact that you have difficulty establishing longer relationships and your difficulty trusting your family as a 7-year-old, you're supposed to trust adults, right?
Yeah.
They're supposed to make you feel safe. And you had this father figure who came into your life who was supposed to step in and help and play that role for a small amount of time. And he took advantage of the situation and abused you for 7 or 6 months. So, even from a conscious standpoint, that messes with your capacity to trust people. But even on an unconscious, subconscious level, your ability to recognize a safe person from a not safe person is going to be significantly harder, and that's going to impact your relationship with your doctor, your relationship with your parents. Your parents were supposed to keep you safe, and even after the event, they didn't get you the help that you needed. And so there's a lot of reasons why trust would be difficult for you right now, and throughout your life. Especially, throughout your life, you have time periods where you're kind of establishing who you are, and you're learning to get along with your peers and relating to your peers. And if you're having difficulty connecting with them because you're not sure that you can trust them, it would make sense that some of your relationships were strained over the course of your lifetime. As far as socially, your social groups, changing social groups, do you feel like you've belonged to any group? Have you felt like an outsider?
I mean, for those like periods of time, I feel like I have like some friends, but they're not like super close, So like I don't really like have people I can like count on, like talk to about everything. So like even when I was in high school, like I had some good friends, but like really when I went away to college, like that was done. I didn't really talk to them anymore. And same with college. Like I had like a couple people that I would hang out with, but then like as soon as college finished, like I didn't really talk to them about that much. I wasn't close with them, but they were friends. And then I moved on, and they moved on. That's sort of what it was.
Okay, that makes sense. In that your attachment with them changes. Your dissociation and your detaching of yourself, kind of pushing yourself away from a present moment. You may just have difficulty right now because of the trauma, really bonding with people and feeling like you can trust them and rely on them, and keeping people at an arm's length, kind of keeping yourself under the radar, is not an uncommon way of dealing with, even just the shape, having to deal with different aspects of maybe feeling a little bit ashamed of what happened, or feeling responsible for what happened, which you were absolutely not responsible for what happened. And really kind of making you feel a little bit by yourself, alone. Like you might have friends, but they have this piece of you. There's this piece of you that they don't get to have, that you feel that you need to keep secret. And that can really impact the way that you connect with other people.
Yeah, it makes sense. No, it makes sense.
The good news is that in the last 20 years, we've learned a lot about developmental trauma and what we can do to help you in different ways that you can learn to move forward differently, and we can help you through the process of processing the trauma and really kind of moving forward with your life and integrating what happened to you, and not letting it be something of the past instead of your present. So we'll need to work through all the the pieces of it and
sure
go from there.
Great.
So I think we're about 20 minutes in.
Yep.
Yeah. So this is a rather informal way, and you'll have to help me out because I don't have the record button. But